Welcome, friends. Today we have a dear friend, Linda, who's the founder of Kayani Wellness and a great admirer of Khalil Gibran. So we're going to have the conversation on the wisdom of Khalil Gibran.
Welcome to today's episode. Linda Sakr is a holistic psychologist and founder of Kayani Wellness Center. Linda works with adults, adolescents, and couples utilizing an eclectic approach, exploring anxiety, depression, parenting, relationships, self-esteem, existential and menopausal issues, to name a few. Linda's aim is to inspire you to become the best version of yourself.
Welcome, Linda. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, what a topic, Khalil Gibran and his wisdom and his works. Something which resonates with every one of us, especially you, a person who admires the wisdom of Khalil Gibran. So I thought we'll no better individual and an admirer than Linda. So very glad and fortunate to have you with us. Thank you for making your time.
Thank you. I feel so honored to be able to discuss Khalil Gibran and his work and how it's impacting all of us. So tell me, Shridan, in terms of Khalil Gibran, how is it in terms of what draws you to his philosophy, and how would you say his work has impacted your life?
See, Khalil Gibran, what he spoke was on the eternal truths of life. He could have existed over 100 years ago. And he could have been from a different nationality or a faith. But what we spoke was truths, eternal truths. It resonated at that point of time. It resonates now with me immensely, like many others, and it will continue to impact future generations. That's what pulled me to Khalil Gibran's works, especially the book, The Prophet. So that's why, another aspect which resonates with me or the impact is, he spoke about individuals, human beings, and everything about it, about an individual, their life, their relationships, love, work, wealth, giving, parenting. I don't think there's any other philosopher who has given such implicit guidance on parenting. I've never come across. I wish there are more people who can talk on it. So there are various ways it impacted me. Another aspect is he wrote the book, The Prophet, in his late 20s. And when he was 40 years like that, it was published. I'm stunned with the wisdom he shared. Every aspect of life he shared. And then it's timeless classic. One is the literature is beautiful. The two aspects of Khalil Gibran is literature is so beautiful, and the second aspect is even more important. The wisdom embedded in that literature makes it even more wonderful. So it's poetic, at the same time, extreme wisdom shared with it. So these are some of these aspects. Another aspect is it should resonate with youngsters. My work or wish is let more youngsters get benefited, because anyone aligning with the wisdom of Khalil Gibran, predominantly The Prophet and many other works, but an individual's life can get altered in the good ways. And that's why the earlier youngsters take up to this way of living, which is just values. So there is clarity, there is values, there is longevity, every aspect about human's life. So that's what, if you ask me, resonates. And my wish and prayer is youngsters should take it up, because you can live a life which is beautiful and glorious. That's my take. But same thing, I want to ask you a question, Linda. You've been a great admirer of the works of Khalil Gibran. What was your source of inspiration in taking up to this works of Khalil Gibran?
It's a great question, and I really liked what you said, and I agree with a lot of what you said. In terms, Khalil Gibran deeply resonated. I read his works when I was a teenager. What do you know about life when you're a teenager and you're talking about the youth and importance of educating the youth? And it just was mind-blowing. I thought, wow, this is so profound, and a lot of spiritual insights, a lot of emotional depth, a lot of universal appeal. He has this ability to talk about human existence in such a, he explores it in simplistic yet profound prose.
Absolutely.
It so resonates with, whether it's timeless, like you said, it was relevant in the early 20th century, it's still relevant today, and it's so accessible, it's so culturally, geographically, there's a lot of wisdom, like you said, and there's a lot that people can learn and grow. And you talked about parenting, and I think it's the best psychology book I've ever read.
Absolutely.
If I can be honest, it's it speaks out to the personal and the collective.
Correct.
It is just so timeless and across generations, and it's just so transformative.
You put across so well. It is meant for every individual. It is irrespective of their spiritual inclination. It talks about the work, and it talks every other aspect. That's why we can go on. The impact which Khalil Gibran has on many people. Wonderful. Thank you. That was a great insight, Linda. That was wonderful.
It's incredible. The ultimate goal is for the person to go inwards and for the person to look at the bigger picture with more compassion and to seek harmony and balance.
Right.
That's the ultimate goal.
Correct.
It's just a very peaceful existence. Yes.
Yes.
Simple yet profound.
Harmony and balance. What a way to live life, huh? Harmony and balance.
Exactly.
Which is most essential.
Absolutely. So tell me, Sridhan, what insights from the Prophet resonate with you most deeply?
See, there are many aspects which resonates deeply, but one aspect which I was just stunned when I read that was on the chapter on giving in the book Prophet. I've never come across any master who has explained giving in such intricate ways. So I'm going to take few aspects from that portion on giving, which makes impact. And Khalil Gibran says, "You give but little when you give of your possessions. It is when you give of yourself that you truly give." Let me repeat. You give but little when you give of your possessions. It is when you give of yourself that you truly give. And he says, when people give their possessions, it's fine. They are giving. That giving is less compared to when giving, he says, only when you let go of the ego, the self-arrogation, the expectation associated with it, and when you let go of that individuality. The great giving happens when you have dissolved your ego, you have submerged your individuality. Then entire life is giving. I keep giving I share this example of a river flows. The moment it enters the ocean, it gives itself away and it becomes the ocean. What is the potential of a river giving and an ocean giving? It has given itself away. Now it's a life of giving. So was a great prince by name Prince Siddhartha. He was a great prince and he was giving, but when he gave himself away, became Gautama Buddha. Gautama Buddha still gives. That's what resonated with me. You give little, but when you give of your possessions, you truly give when you give yourself away. All these great masters, they dissolved their ego. They became one with that eternal truth. And ever since, they are giving, or they continue to give. Khalil Gibran continues to give. For me, that his chapter on giving resonated with me a lot. This is one, just a start. Next he says, you often say, I would give, but only to the deserving. The trees in your orchard say not so, nor the flocks in your pasture. They give that they may live, for to withhold is to perish. He highlights, you may give, but he says, are they deserving enough? The trees in the orchard does not say so. It gives shade, it gives fruits. It's not selective. It is not self-centered. It is not deciding whom to give. Anyone comes under the tree, the shade is there for them. The fruits are there for them. Nor that the flocks in your pasture. No cow is suggesting, I am not going to give milk to this person, only to that person. Nor a flower. A flower gives fragrance irrespective of whether people are admiring it or not. Just because Linda is passing by, I will release a little more fragrance. Shri is passing by, curtail it. He doesn't need it. It gives. That is what it designed for. Giving. It says giving should be a natural element in us. So, for me, that resonates. We always say, you often say, I would give, but only to the deserving. So, that's one aspect. So, he suggests giving, the attitude of giving, he questions. Attitude of giving. Then, there's another aspect. I'm trying to quote a few from that chapter. He says, there are those who give little of the much they have, and they give it for recognition, and their hidden desires makes their gifts unwholesome. I am repeating it because it's inspiring. There are those who give little of the much they have, and they give it for recognition, and their hidden desire makes the gifts unwholesome. People do give, but they give it to their children, their spouse. They're near and dear. And if you ask me, it is pampering. I'm not saying don't give. I'm not suggesting unintelligent charity here. But most people, when they give, it's a transaction. I'm giving you this, but I expect something from you. If I don't get whatever I wanted from this transaction, maybe my giving will stop. Or I will start giving to a person who reciprocates in certain ways. There's a beautiful statement. Express gratitude, but do not expect gratitude. It looks like a downer, but the fact is, express gratitude. So grateful for you to have joined, to have provided the space. Express your gratitude, but let us not expect gratitude. And so what's wrong with it? You may be disappointed. You may be disappointed. That's why those who give little of the much they have. And first itself is there's so much you have, and you give little of the much you have. In fact, you give the excess. And then it says, and they give it for recognition. You're trading something, you're giving something so that you get something out of it. That's not giving, that is a business transaction. And then that hidden desire makes their gifts unwholesome. It's not, in fact, a very refined way of saying you're not giving. It is so this is one. And in this aspect, he says, beautiful portion now. In this chapter on giving, it says, it is well to give when asked, but it is better to give unasked. What a statement.
Beautiful.
It is well to give when asked, but it is better to give when unasked, through understanding. It is better to give unasked through understanding. And to the open-hearted, the search for the one who shall receive is a joy greater than giving. Khalil Gibran talks about compassion. He talks about it's better to give unasked. Compassion. Compassion is the purest of human emotions. Empathy is you understand what people are going through. Sympathy is you feel for them. You feel for them. Compassion is a combination of empathy and sympathy. You understand what others are going through, you feel for them, and you do all that you can to bring them out of their troubles, their challenges. So here he talks about compassion. Say it is well to give and ask, but it's better to give unasked. Only out of compassion. It is through understanding. See, another thing. See, it is better to give unasked through understanding. He's not talking about unintelligent charity here. Compassion. We need people who have risen to compassion. Mere empathy is fine. Sympathy is okay, but compassion, you will do your best to serve others. And to the open-hearted, the search for the one who shall receive is joy greater than giving. Can you imagine?
Beautifully said.
Our gratitude to the great Khalil Gibran for what he says, where there is compassion, you give totally.
Yes.
And finally, in this aspect, he says, we're just talking about one chapter. It's a lifetime learning. And he says, and there is aught you would withhold, and all you have shall someday be given. And there is aught you would withhold, all you have shall someday be given. So give now, and that the season of giving may be yours and not your inheritors. In simple terms, now, whatever you have will be given, will be taken away. And what do you want to withhold? And someday it will be given. Let the season of giving be yours, not your inheritors. I take this example of Alexander the Great. His famous words were, he said, when you bury me, make sure that my hands are stretched outside. When you bury, let the whole world know, in spite of conquering the world, he couldn't take a thing with him. A thing with him. Let the whole world, when you bury me, make sure that my hands are stretched outside in the air. Let the whole world know that in spite of conquering the world, he couldn't take a thing with him. Give now. Let the season of giving be yours. Whatever you have, what can you take? These masters highlighted you either take the wisdom you have gained or the ignorance you have accumulated. Give. Joyfully give. In the book Les Miserables, Victor Hugo beautifully states, life is to give, not to take. You find givers are happy. Genuine, happy givers. Not unintelligent charity. Unintelligent giving is pampering, which is no giving at all. But genuine givers. Mother Teresa says, if you can't give anything, at least give a smile. Genuine givers. Life is to give. What would you take? So, that's why I said, for me, there's so many aspects of the Prophet resonates, but this resonated immensely. It impacted me deeply because he has done an entire thesis on giving. And then when you read this or understand this, whatever I'm giving looks like, there is some selfishness associated. There's some kind of a motive behind it. The trees don't say that. Trees give fruits, shade. When in India the mango season comes, you have it. What taste it is, or the blueberries, or some dates in this part of the world. Wow, it is nature gives. There is no motives. There is no judgments. There is no selfishness associated. But a human being, should I give? Are they deserving enough? According to whom? Who decides who's deserving? And when? So, this chapter was something which hit me so hard. It made me think for many, many months. I still contemplate on it. I wouldn't say I've arrived. I've still, whenever I read, another dimension comes up. So, it's a beautiful thing. Example of Alexander the Great. What you want to make sure the hands are stretched out. So that's my take on it. Now with Khalil Gibran, I want to ask you a question. How does Khalil Gibran's Lebanese-American background influenced his perspectives on life and spirituality? What would be, no, you are the right person to ask that.
Yes, yeah. Before I answer that, I want to comment how beautifully said you mentioned about giving. I mean, it's unconditional
Right.
giving, and it's
Correct.
no agenda. It's not transactional, and it's so much nicer to give than to take. And it's really ultimately just doing it with your heart and soul, and without, like you said, without being asked.
Correct.
It's like giving a compliment. When you're asked for a compliment, it doesn't feel as nice.
Correct.
It's not received as well as when someone voluntarily gives a compliment, a smile. Simple things can really have an impact on an individual. So it's just beautiful.
I have seen some, especially with children, when they give, there's a smile. When they withhold, there's a frown. There's a nice pencil, no, can I have it? It's mine. And they turn the other way around. When you aggrandize, take, there's a frown. When you give, oh, you like it? Take it.
Yes,
There's
giving
no that
is selfless. Whereas taking can be sometimes, expectations, like you said, expectations lead to disappointment and a lack of gratitude, and all that.
How complicated we made our lives, huh?
Yes.
If only you can give.
Complicated, absolutely. So and this is the beauty of Khalil Gibran's
Yes.
work, is to simplify. It's really about simplifying one's life, one's day-to-day.
Correct.
life
I
living.
think when you understand his wisdom, it looks simplified. First, everything it was hitting me. No, then you're not giving. Then it is. I'm with you. I wish many people understand it.
Yes.
Let them understand what kind of giving they are. It's conditional,
Exactly.
preferential, pampering, catering, which is not giving at all. It is. How can we educate people on this? Such a tough part, but the journey has started.
The journey has started, absolutely. And to
True.
answer your great question about Khalil Gibran's American-Lebanese background and how it influenced his work, Khalil Gibran was born and brought up in a village in Lebanon, Shari, and he was very much influenced by, he was Christian Maronite, his village was Arabic-speaking predominantly, and, he was inspired by Eastern spirituality, mysticism, collectivism, it's a collective culture, communal living, poetic expression was very big in those days. And so all these influences were very prominent. And then he moved to the US.
Yeah.
And that's when he realized that he was exposed to a different world, a world of individualism, a world of rationalism, a world of individual ideals and freedom. And he just completely, it was almost like he integrated the
Right.
two, the infusion of East and West, the Eastern wisdom with the Western idealism, and it was just beautifully done the way that he managed to bring the two cultures together. And there's so much to learn. There's best of both worlds. There's so much in terms of, a lot of people either are very Eastern or very Western, but to have both blended in so beautifully can resonate with more people. And also with him being an immigrant, there's a duality. You are, in a sense, longing for home and missing home, but at the same time, you're enjoying the freedom that you have. You want to belong, you're working, figuring out your identity. There's the whole living in exile. And those days were tough. We're talking early 20th century. He went from a lovely village in Lebanon to, he was living in a very poverty, it was very, it was different. He had to adapt, but he adapted quite well. And for him to actually have written the Prophet in English, given
Right.
that Arabic was his mother tongue, is actually quite genius.
It's beyond genius, I guess, in the sense. It is, first I thought somebody who would translate about his works. It means, what you're saying is he utilized that blend well, East and the West. In spite of the turmoil or whatever the difficulties, he utilized that for his own evolution and shared that experience with one and all.
True.
It's not that he was, even the suffering he shared in a different way.
He did, yeah.
It is,
There's
Fascinating.
A lot of suffering in his life, and he had multiple losses. He
Is
lost
it?
his mother, his siblings, all in a very short span of time.
Wow.
So this tragic, really through suffering, there's a lot of growth. Is something that he talks about quite a lot in his work. He's very big on the wisdom behind the suffering. So let me ask you, Shri, how can Gibran's wisdom guide us through life's challenges and uncertainties?
I mean, his entire works is guiding each one of us in the good times and the bad times, in our challenges and uncertainties. Most people, they face challenges in many areas of life, but we need a few hours to discuss, but I'm taking two aspects on where most people face challenges and difficult uncertainties. Are two areas I'm taking. One is work, another is relationships. So Khalil Gibran's wisdom, how it impacts us in these two aspects. Again, taking the inputs from the Prophet, when he speaks about work, I'm quoting Khalil Gibran. He says, "Work is love made visible." Can't imagine. One statement conveys everything. You don't need anything more. But work is love made visible. And if you cannot work with love, but only with distaste, it is better that you should leave your work and sit at the gates of the temple and take alms from those who work with joy. Look at this. I mean, he can't give any better guidance. He said, if you cannot work with love, but only with distaste, it is better that you should leave your work and sit at the gate of the temple and take alms from those who work with joy.
Beautiful.
One thing, I would say, the challenges most people face is not many enjoy their work.
Sadly.
Sadly, I mean, it is one aspect we have to highlight is if you're spending 8 to 10 hours a day at your workplace, shouldn't it be one which inspires you, motivates you, you look forward to Monday mornings? It is enjoying the work. The podcast, it's tough one, but we look forward to it. How can, the more you unearth the wisdom of this great poet, philosopher, the more you are inspired. There's so much more to share. Work is love made visible. So, you love it. If you can do that, that's a learning for us. It's a challenge. Especially, I tell all parents, make sure that your children take up to work, they enjoy. You may not resonate with it, but when I say enjoy, that is something from within. You look forward to it.
Yes, it's very important.
And in that area, if you look forward to your work, if you enjoy your work, there are no failures. It's all learning lessons. You learn in a certain way. When Graham Bell was asked thousands of failed experiments, were you not upset? He said, I came to know 1,000 ways of not doing it. You enjoy what you do. So that's one of the major aspects. Enthusiasm, inspiration. Your work should be an expression of your inner qualities. It is initially a bit challenging, difficult, but take this guidance. Steve Jobs also says that. There's something which resonates with you. Take up to it. All the great, successful businessmen, entrepreneurs suggest you got to take something which you absolutely love, you enjoy. So, they're wonderful. And then another aspect on this says, when you work, quoting Khalil Gibran here, when you work, you are a flute through whose heart the whispering of the heart turns to music. Can you imagine? When you work, you are a flute through whose heart the whispering of the heart turns to music. Meaning, he says, you can dissolve your ego through work. If your work promotes your ego, we define ego as the ego as exaggerated glorification of oneself. If your work promotes your ego, then make sure that you will use your ego to destroy yourself. Your work should be an avenue to dissolve your ego. I've attended many classical concerts. There's one of a very famous Indian Hindustani classical musician. 3 hours of exquisite performance. When you're sitting with him and having a conversation, and I asked him, how is it? We were all so, thrilled to be listening to you, your concert. He said, Sridharan, when I take the flute and start playing, there's no thought of me playing, it is just playing the flute. And exactly, Khalil Gibran uses the same thing. When you work, you are a flute through whose heart the whispering of the heart turns to music. What is flute? It's just a wooden instrument with some 7-8 holes. Exquisite music flows through you. He said, great music flows through me, not from me, he said. Not from me, through me. And 3 hours. And the entire individuality is dissolved. So work must be like that. And yes, this is one. This is on one work. The second is on relationships. And I'm sure many of the Khalil Gibran's admirers, they know this particular quote on marriage. I'm sure you are aware of it. Marriage is a temple resting on 2 pillars. If the pillars come too close, the temple collapses. Look at the way he equated marriage as a sacred institution. And it's not that he existed 1,000 years ago, maybe 100 years ago. Marriage is a temple resting on 2 pillars. Beautiful. He didn't say 4 pillars or 5 pillars. Yes. 2 pillars. If the pillars come too close, the temple collapses. He's talking about attachment, which destroys relationship. Next aspect he says is, love possesses not, nor would it be possessed. Our life, I'm going to explain a little further on this. Our life functions on cause and effect. When he talks about the first one, when he talks about when the pillars come too close, the temple collapses. He talks about attachment. And again, when I said cause and effect, an indiscriminate flow of thoughts from you to an object or a person. I repeat, indiscriminate, continuous, indisciplined, unintelligent flow of thoughts from you, from your mind to a person or an object creates an attachment to that source. So, indiscriminate flow of thoughts is the cause, attachment is the effect. Next, when you're attached to a person, they seem to pamper your ego. Initial stages. So attachment plus ego fulfillment becomes the cause, possessiveness becomes the effect. First, indiscriminate flow of thought to a person creates the effect, which is attachment. Attachment, next again, attachment and ego validation. They're servicing your ego. Attachment plus ego validation becomes the cause. Possessiveness becomes an effect. Possessiveness, that's why when I say possessiveness, it is a sense of entitlement, ownership. You think you have them. They belong to you and you alone. They don't have an independent existence. He or she or it belongs to me and me alone. Possessiveness. Flow of thoughts, attachment by ego validation, possessiveness. Now, possessiveness plus emotional hurt becomes the cause, loneliness becomes an effect. You find anyone who is possessive of another, how long can they service them? There's a time where, no, look here, they stop validating your needs or interests. Possessiveness plus emotional hurt, because you have not been catered to in a way you wanted to be catered to. At the same time, possessiveness still exists. Plus emotional hurt becomes the cause. Loneliness is the effect. Let me tell you, loneliness is going to be one of the biggest pandemics or epidemics in the future. Yes. What is loneliness? You could be living in big cities, you could have large families, but the thought is nobody understands me in the way I want to be understood. Nobody accepts me in the way I want to be accepted. So possessiveness plus emotional hurt becomes the cause, loneliness becomes an effect. Loneliness plus you are deprived of pure emotions. You're lonely and your emotions there is emotional insecurity along with loneliness. That becomes a cause. Depression becomes an effect. Depression is a state where your compressed personality, and depression plus a lack of guidance becomes the cause. Destruction of the personality becomes an effect. The depression plus lack of guidance, the ego is still there, I can handle it. That becomes a cause, and they eventually destroy themselves. So, that's why the way he says, love possesses not, nor it would be possessed. And he says, when the pillars come too close, the temple collapses. He gives the formula and leaves. He allows us to contemplate. Another one, he says, in marriage and in relationships, he says, love one another, but do not make a bond of love. Let it rather be a moving sea between the shores of your souls. Love one another, but do not make a bond of love. Don't get dependent. Let it rather be a moving sea between the shores of your souls. I keep highlighting, your love for the other should never be dependent on their love for you. You love them independently of their love towards you.
Yes,
and finally in this, I'm sorry, didn't take because, and he says, and ever has it been known that love knows not its own depth until the hour of separation. Until the hour of separation, the value or the importance of that relationship, a person would have taken it for granted. Entitlement, they've taken it for granted. They didn't know the value of it until it is no more available to you. I mean, therefore, these are only two aspects, Linda, work and relationship, which is a major aspect of an individual's life. And here, forget anything else. Everyone needs our great friend, philosopher and guide, Khalil Gibran's guidance in this. You align with our great friend. You are a friend to yourself. You don't align with this great master, you're being an enemy to yourself. So these are only two aspects. I can go on, but these are the two aspects which resonates with me, which having dealt with major uncertainties, challenges can be held.
Yes.
My forte has been the Prophet, but there are other books which this great master has written, which you are more aware of. So my question, Linda, how does The Broken Wings reflect Khalil Gibran's views on love, freedom, and societal expectations?
Yes, what a beautiful book. I mean, I highly recommend it. It's a novella, so it's a very short novel. It's an autobiographical book, so a lot of it is he comes into play. And it's a love story. It's a very tragic and heart-wrenching love story between a young man and Selma, a young lady in Lebanon. And Selma is promised to someone else to marry this other person that she's not in love with. She's not a nice person. Her father had agreed with the priest that this was the right thing to do. And it just shows you in those days, love, freedom, societal expectations. People didn't have a say in how they lived their lives. Freedom wasn't just physical freedom, emotional, spiritual freedom. There wasn't much, and this still happens nowadays, where certain societies, there are certain expectations that the parents or religious institutions take over. So it was a very beautifully written, because love, the way it's portrayed in that novel, is very transformative, very transcendental, but also very painful, very pure, the way they loved each other, Selma and the protagonist. It was almost like so connected.
They made for each other almost.
They were made for each other, but they couldn't be together. That was the sad part about it. And no matter how much you spoke up, you couldn't. You ended up living with heartbreak and unfulfilled potential, and you just have to accept your fate in a way.
Wow.
You don't end up living your authentic self. It's really, it really puts things in perspective, because Khalil Gibran says that freedom is about self-fulfillment and happiness, and it's important to have that level of freedom. And he experienced it when he moved to the United States, that there was more freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and whereas in these societies, communal, collectivistic societies, it's still very much, there is that, you don't have as much to say. So it was actually quite, the fate of the characters was quite sad, and it could have been prevented, but that this was how it was dealt with.
Must be a tough one. You see, almost it's autobiographical,
Yes.
and on freedom. And the expectations of a family, you have to adhere to, almost sacrificing your quality of life. It is, and it looks like a lot has happened. So I'm sure going to read this Broken Wings,
Yes.
because for me, starting the Prophet itself was a lot, or going through it was a lot. 6 months of going through it, and I thought, Broken Wings. But even the title appears apt, Broken Wings.
It's a broken spirit, really. In theory, this is what happened. The spirits of these two characters were just broken because they were so aligned and they were so together, and they were so, and you were talking about pillars and space, let there be spaces in your togetherness. And it's so powerful, about love and divine love, and, going beyond the worldly attachments and possessions. And love in this context was very much, it was very pure, and unity of freedom and spirit, but it just, that was the reality,
And then in that book, they don't get together.
They don't get together, sadly.
Sadly,
Yes,
and
just-
I can imagine.
Yes.
And a poet, philosopher like the Khalil Gibran, imagine how he can write on it, since his depth. Even when we discussed and ever has it known that love knows not its depth until the hour of separation.
Exactly.
It
Yes.
is, I can imagine. Another great book to read. So his emphasis is more on freedom in this, or the inability to deal with the societal expectations. What do you find is important for a reader in this?
So the three prominent themes in the novella, The Broken Wings, are love, freedom, and societal expectations, family obligations.
You can't go against.
Exactly, the expectations, the external expectations that we have no control over, and how they dictate our lives. Love, as you said, is not about attachment. In this case, it's about freedom, and there's this understanding, and there's mutual unity and unity of spirit, and it's not a binding love. It's more of an understanding. It's more of a divine love. It's more of a transcendental, transformative love. So it's just takes a lot. It takes a lot of maturity to have that kind
Correct.
of bond, rather than a restricted kind of bond.
It almost highlights sacrifice. It eventually sacrifices his love. It is, which is the greatest form of love. And people may say, in the present scenario, how ridiculous, but because there is purity, because there is respect. It appears rigidity, but I'm only taking the clue from what you shared. What must be the purity of these people? In fact, they are not going against others.
True.
And then sacrifice.
Exactly. And that was the times where, the freedom of the people were restricted. They didn't have much of a say. They had to adhere to what they were given, what they were told. This man was promised to Selma before Khalil Gibran came into her life. So it's almost like he had given his word to the priest. He didn't want to go back on his word. Even though, he could have seen the context that they were in.
Right.
It was no longer relevant to be with that man, but word was given, and they had to stick to what was, there was a certain rigidity about, how decisions were being made. And so that was the fate. You cannot be your authentic self. You almost had to adhere to these societal norms that got in the way of day-to-day life.
What could have been a great couple.
Yes.
It is but we can attribute to various things. But what you say, fascinating, and the title is beautiful, The Broken Wings.
Yes.
He had a way with words.
He did. It was more the broken spirit in this case.
The wings, meaning you fly, freedom, love, freedom. You're above expectations, wings, broken wings.
Yes, you cannot. You're stuck. You're
grounded.
Grounded, yes.
You can't. A bird which is meant for a sky which is lying on the ground, which is, I can imagine. I'm going to definitely buy this book.
Yes.
Now that you're given that impetus to read, and it's always sad to read relationships which is meant to be and doesn't happen.
True.
Especially in the present day world where people find very difficult to get into a relationship, sustain a relationship. Here is monumental sacrifice.
True.
I hope many people understand it. I'm glad.
Beautiful.
But thank you for that wonderful insight. And I'm sure it will help many viewers to take up that book, read, and have that genuine love. And in the present scenario, live up for your own conviction.
True.
It's fine. Be authentic. Be true to yourself.
True. Yes.
So otherwise, why to live a life of regret?
True. Exactly. Absolutely.
Wow, wonderful. That was great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And tell me, Shridan, what advice on the Prophet would you give someone seeking purpose or meaning?
Few aspects I can highlight. If you ask, the entire works of Khalil Gibran, the Prophet, and many others, it's all loaded with wisdom. But there are certain aspects, even a youngster or a person in the initial stages of self-development should take up to. One of the statement he makes, Khalil Gibran makes, is, if your heart is a volcano, how shall you expect flowers to blossom? If your heart is a volcano, it's like a volcano, how can you expect flowers to blossom? He talks about anger. Anger has destroyed far more than any other weapon. Anger, that's when your heart is like a volcano. Anger, most people, it's so easy to get angry. At a drop of hat, people get angry. It's whether it is an advice from the Khalil Gibran. Anger. If only we understand the futility of anger. What has anger cost? Except breaking up a genuine relationship or creating unhappiness. Emerson makes this statement. For every minute you become angry, you lose 60 seconds of peace.
So true.
1:60. And Lord Buddha says, anger is like holding a ball of fire in your hand and throwing that ball of fire at the other person. He says, for sure the other person gets hurt, but in the process you've burnt your hand. Anger, if there is anger, my master used to say, you should use your anger, never lose your anger. If there is anger, it should be constructive. It should make you, maybe you are indisciplined, maybe you are unfaithful, maybe you did something wrong, and you're a little bit tough on yourself to improve yourself. That's okay. If there is anger, it should be constructive, not destructive. There's a statement, speak when you're angry, you'll make the greatest speech you'll ever regret.
That's so true. Yeah.
So just simple statement, if your heart is a volcano, how shall you expect flowers to blossom? You could be a great flower who gives fragrance, but it's a volcano. And it's erupting all the time. How can that be? Therefore, he says, watch out, anger. If there is anger, there must be a desire which is interrupted. You want to come out of anger, identify the desire which is interrupted. If you deal with the desire, the interruption, then there is no anger. So most people do anger management. If you're angry, go to change the venue, have chamomile tea, or lie down.
Yeah.
Much more, we can never get angry without a desire being interrupted. So once you handle it, then you're better off. Another aspect Khalil Gibran gives us. Khalil Gibran. He says, I have learned silence from the talkative, tolerance from the intolerant, and kindness from the unkind. Yet strange I am that I am ungrateful to these teachers. Khalil Gibran says, I have learned silence from the talkative, tolerance from the intolerant, kindness from the unkind. Yet strange, I am ungrateful to these teachers. In simple terms, what Gibran says is, if you turn introvert in the true sense, not in the American sense, in certain countries, introvert means you're a recluse, you are in your room, not sociable, not that way. Introvert is one, in the spiritual terms, one who reflects, who does a lot of contemplation. It is, what is this experience trying to teach me? They go inward and find answers. Like Blaise Pascal's statement, all sufferings of humanity can be handled if they are willing to sit in a place quietly and think.
True.
So, he says you can learn through knowledge or through others' experience. That's what I find. So therefore, nothing is wrong. You could be with a talkative person, but you learn about silence. You could be a very intolerant person, but you know the value of tolerance. You could be with a person who is very a person who is unkind. You know what the value of kindness is. So all these are teachers.
Yes, the contrast puts it in perspective.
Correct.
Yes.
I have known, I remember watching a couple in a restaurant bitterly fighting. And I said, why would anybody get into a relationship and suffer? By contrast, wouldn't we be peaceful? There is not enough time to live. Where is the time to fight? By contrast, it is, that's the way he says, yet I'm ungrateful for these teachers. Another one, he says, another advice. I'm giving you bits and pieces of advice of our great friend Khalil Gibran. Your living is determined not so much by what life brings to you, but by the attitude you bring to life. Not so much by what happens to you as the way your mind looks at what happens. He talks about having the right attitude. Entire life is nothing. A person who is enjoying life means they have the right attitude. What is attitude? We say attitude is without changing anything externally, with a slight change in the way I think, feel, and function, my entire life changes. So that's why, your living is determined not so much by what life brings to you, but by the attitude you bring to life. Therefore, whatever life offers me, if I have the right attitude with which I meet life, life could be beautiful. Everything appears a blessing. Otherwise, wrong attitude, you're in trouble. So, another few things. This is another aspect I want to highlight is on children. How can I not, when you ask me about advice from the Prophet and Khalil Gibran, my favorite thing apart from giving is parenting, on what he spoke on parenting. He says, many people would have heard it, but let's hear it another time. Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you and not from you. How we so much packed in this. They come through you and not from you. Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. In what he suggests is, you don't own they are your children, but no possessiveness. And you have to keep doing your obligatory duty as a parent. And that's about it. That's about it. He says, he continues, he says, you may give them your love, but not your thoughts. You may strive to be like them, but seek not to make them like you. In simple terms, he wrote this when he was not even a parent, I guess. He says, as a parent, you should set an example and not keep sermonizing to your children. But two faults most parents make. They don't set an example and they keep on advising. Therefore, there's a friction. And in my opinion, there's no other great master who has given step-by-step suggestions for parenting, like the way Khalil Gibran shared his wisdom. It's your children are not your children. Number one, if you are a parent, whatever your obligatory duties are, as a parent, you do it. And one of the first obligatory duty is to set an example. Lead the way. Don't just show the way. I had a father who was a great example and never sermonized. Never sermonized. And as a result, my respect and reverence, gratitude towards him is paramount. He's no more. But says for wherever, grateful for that source. He could have given various advices, even at tough times, but he didn't. He said, he's our son. Someday he will grow. As a parent, set an example. The children should look up to the parent, as a father, as a hero, as a mother, as the one, as a confidant. Set an example. I'm not saying don't give them any advice. When they seek guidance, please give them. Otherwise, it's very difficult for a parent to see their children learn through mistakes, their experiences. But do your best and let it not be a transaction. I have done so much to you. Look what you're doing to me. That I hope no parent should say that. Done so much for you and now you're doing this to us. Is that right? And it's not a transaction. Parenting should be a blessing, a joy, a thing which you take up with you cherish that responsibility.
True.
And setting an example. Yes. So this has been some of the, I would say, the advice or the guidance which Khalil Gibran says. The last one in this, which I find very poetic, very, I would say, romantic, but I hope people understand it. It is about relationships, he says. One day, you will ask me, I'm quoting Khalil Gibran here, one day you may ask me which is more important, my life or yours? And Gibran says, I will say mine, and you will walk away not knowing you are my life. How it is, maybe it is, could be from broken wings or various examples. One day you will ask me which is more important, my life or yours. I will say mine, and you will walk away not knowing that you are my life. Can you imagine? Wouldn't it melt any?
Yes, of course.
So in simple terms, family is not just important, it's everything. That's what I'm saying. Family is just not important. It's everything. It's everything. So we need people who are successful at work, who enjoy work. We need people who are good spouses. They cherish that relationship. We need parents who are adorable. The children look up to them. We need siblings who are compatible with each other. We need citizens who are responsible enough. So that's what. With family, your life is not just important, it's everything. So these are some of the things. Anger, it is you learn from various sources, having the right attitude. Eventually, maturity is what? Spiritual maturity is nothing but having the right attitude to life. And then children, parenting. I wish there are many other philosopher, thinker, saints and mystics who can talk on, share their wisdom on parenting. But in my experience, no one come close to Khalil Gibran. Yes. And hats off to this great man for what he shared.
Absolutely.
And it's timeless.
It's timeless.
When I say timeless, it absolutely fits into a parent. In fact, the best part is, I've not gone to the next one. We need another entire session on it. Everything is pertaining to the parent, not to the children. Yes. Most of the parenting sessions are, they talk about children. The entire thing is on the parent.
It's a mirror. Parenting is like putting up a mirror, and that's what it's about, parenting ourselves.
Correct.
Ultimately, we're not here to give off clones of one another. That's not the point, or telling your child how to live life and what to do. We're guides. As parents, the idea is to guide, but you're not possessing, you don't possess them, you don't possess their thoughts. They ultimately choose the path in terms of what they want to study. They're intuitive as well. Children have a sense of...
I mean, children are wonderful now. If you ask me, they are smart, they are sensitive.
They are.
And when they are guided well, or they're molded, mold is not the right word, when they are approached well, they can become great citizens, and they're far more confident these days. A little bit of guidance here and there, but setting an example
is key.
Is the key. Setting in every aspect. In that aspect, I was very fortunate. What a great father, man. Wherever he is, bless him. What an example he was. Everybody respected him. He was a giver all his life. There was smile, there was joy, there was charitable nature. He was a great father and a loving husband. When it came to relatives, everyone looked up to him. I said, no. And in that way, fortunate.
Great legacy that you're carrying, yes.
That was my example. That was my example. And and I thought, my mistake was I thought all parents are like that. Until I met my friend's parents, they're cats and dogs.
So different.
So, this resonated with me so well.
Yes.
And towards the end of that parenting, it says, you are like the bow, and the children are you are the bow, and children are the arrow. And the nature helps you to pull that bow so that the arrow can reach the destination and the bow can come to its original position. It's freedom for the bow and the arrow. No arrow is supposed to be in the bow all the time.
True.
And the purpose of the arrow is to reach its destination. Purpose of the bow is to bend. Therefore, that's parenting is. You can imagine. That was
well said.
That was
Khalil
Gibran's take, advices or guidance, inputs on various aspects of life. Now, there's a few questions for you. That's why. What symbolism can be found in this book, Forerunner? And how does it relate to Gibran's spiritual views? Because I'm not that familiar with other books. You are, a little more of inputs. You may be a lineage of the Gibran. So, what would be your take on that?
Yes, it's another brilliant piece of work. I highly recommend it. The Forerunner, there's a lot of symbolism. It's mostly about human existence, the soul, self-realization. And the Forerunner himself is like the Prophet. He's a spiritual seeker. He has a lot of clarity, understanding, wisdom. He's non-conventional. He can see and anticipate consequences and see the bigger picture. So there are many symbols. One of them is the journey. The journey is both the spiritual journey and a literal journey. So the physical and the metaphysical. Journey of self-discovery, journey of self-realization, going inwards. All his work was about inner wisdom and going inwards and really connecting with yourself, understanding yourself better. So the journey, it's going on that spiritual quest to understand who you are, where you're at, where you see yourself. So it's very important. The most powerful symbol is the heart, and the heart meaning divine love, love in all its forms. And how he classified love. It was more, the heart was not just an intellectual, but it was more of an emotional, and there was a lot of wisdom.
It's not just an organ.
It's not just an organ. The heart is very, very powerful. And in his book, he talks a lot about that, how the heart can guide you and inspire you, and it's very important. Then you have the mountain. The mountain is a spiritual ascent. You're climbing that mountain, you're getting higher consciousness, you're getting enlightened, you're learning. Again, inner peace, inner wisdom, obstacles along the way, how you navigate these obstacles. So there's a lot of reflecting, self-reflection, understanding. there's also lightness and darkness. And he talks about the importance, the duality, the light. You can't have light without dark, and dark,
Right.
they coexist. And we need one and we need both in order to grow. And you mentioned earlier about the ego. I really liked what you said about, EGO. It was exaggerated
glorification
of
oneself.
Yes, and ultimately his goal, Khalil's goal, Gibran's goal, is to dissolve the ego and to really connect with yourself. So, lightness is all about clarity, it's about wisdom, is about transformation, whereas darkness is about, the unknown and suffering and ignorance. So moving away from that and more away from the darkness, more towards the light, and kind of seeing where you are, how your life fits. It's like yin and yang, you
Right.
need
One cannot exist without the other, or because of one, the other has a value.
Exactly. Just like you were saying about learning talkative from the silence from the talkative, you
Right.
need the contrast. The contrast is a teacher, it really makes you go inwards, but just beautifully written, resonates, gets you thinking. Really, his work is just touches many different individuals and is so relevant today more than ever.
Is this in the form poetry or like a novel?
It's not a novel and it's not poetry. They're like parables, so like almost like fables and stories, short, and with every story there's a key message and the learning, and it really gets you to think. I think what we need is these lessons are just, like we keep saying, timeless.
Correct. Much needed.
Much needed.
Again, even the title Forerunner sounds something, or it looks like what he wanted to be.
Yes.
This is what he wants an individual to be. Am I right?
Absolutely, yes. Ultimately, it's taking charge and going inwards and transcending the ego. And we're on a journey. I mean, we are work in progress. We're constantly working on ourselves and about being conscious. And that's what we're looking at nowadays as well. Being mindful, being conscious, being accountable, learning. There's so much that we can gain, and like you said, start with the youth. And
this also is written in English, or is this? It's all written in English.
Everything is in English. Yes, everything's been translated, which is amazing.
Wonderful. Yes. Then I will get a copy of this as well.
Definitely.
I'm told some 10, 12 books are there, yes. And the way you explain creates interest.
Yes.
And a mountain. So it's incredible.
Yeah, majestic. Mountains are very majestic, and just there's so much clarity when you're on a mountain. I love mountains. I get a lot, there's a calling, and I just find I get a lot of answers when I'm on the mountain. There's a lot of, you're in nature, you're high above, you're almost at one with, it's just beautiful. It's very,
I'm sure you belong to the lineage of Khalil Gibran.
I've yet to find out, yes.
Whether you find out or not, if you align with the thought process, a person from South Korea could be aligned with or from India.
Absolutely.
Just imagine if we were living in his time.
So different.
So different. It will be fascinating. The Forerunner. So friends, please make sure that you read that book, Forerunner, as well as The Broken Wings, but never miss out on the Prophet.
Yes, definitely.
Yes.
So tell me, Sridhan, how can Gibran's philosophy inspire personal growth, self-awareness, and mindfulness?
All his works, again, were revolving around these aspects, mindfulness. The mindfulness is a very big word now, but at that time, what he mentioned was, it is mindful living. But not in the way it has been, it resonates in the present scenario. And any inputs of Khalil Gibran you've taken is focused on personal growth. Entire wisdom is focused on personal growth. And it will lead to self-awareness. So again, I'm taking the words of Khalil Gibran and on self-awareness. He says, knowledge of the self is the mother of all knowledges. So it is incumbent on me to know myself, to know it completely, its characteristics, its subtleties, and its very atom. Khalil Gibran says, no, knowledge of the self is the mother of all knowledges. Who am I in essence? What am I constituted of? What is this body, mind, and intellect? What is this energy? It is and he says, and how do I contact the world? See, it is incumbent on me to know myself, to know it completely, not in bits and pieces, to know it completely, its characteristics. What is the mind? What is the nature of the mind? What is the intellect? What is the conscience? And its subtleties. How does it interact with the world? And its very atom to the minute aspect. He says that's the mother of all knowledges. What he says is you can gather knowledge externally, which is intelligence. A person could be well versed in the field of medicine, accountancy. That is an external knowledge. It is not the knowledge of yourself, which is fine. You need external knowledge to make a living, standard of living, but the quality of living gets absolutely enhanced with the knowledge of who you are, the knowledge of the self. So he directly aligns our journey with personal growth. We need to know who we are, essentially. Imagine all our life we live without knowing who we are. We know so much about so many things except about ourselves. I don't know how to handle my emotions. I don't know how to handle my relationships, but I know, so many celebrities who have gone through this, or the politics and other aspects. No. So that is one. The next aspect he says is, he says another aspect. Beauty is eternity gazing at itself in the mirror. This is a lesson on self-awareness. Beauty is nothing but eternity gazing at itself in a mirror. This is poetic and it's in-depth. A person who's gazing at the mirror, he says the beauty is eternity gazing at itself in the mirror. First, we need to understand what eternity is. Your physical body, mind, and intellect are perishable. It's not eternal. But there is this eternal energy in each one of us. And how do we define eternity? That which existed in the past, which exists in the present, and continue to exist in the future. That's the beauty element, he says. That's in you. And he says beauty is eternity gazing at itself in the mirror. When we look at the mirror, that mark is seen. Not the beauty. That which enables you to see is that eternal beauty, he says. I mean, self-awareness. Please be aware of the marks and other things, but become more self-aware of that beauty in you, which enables you to see, which enables you to hear, which enables you to feel various emotions. This is one. And there's another one which resonates with me deeply. Khalil Gibran says, great beauty captures me. Great beauty captures me, but a beauty still greater frees me even from itself. Great beauty captures me. You sitting in a mountain or in a river banks, it captures you. But a beauty still greater frees me even from itself. I wish I can explain, but I want everyone to reflect on it, contemplate on it. A beauty greater than itself, beauty still greater, frees me even from itself. It is shifted from there to within. It is, in fact, there is a sense of oneness. In fact, everything looks perfect. Everything looks perfect. So, I mean, it is, that's what I'm saying. No, I don't know how to explain, but when I read that, I said, no, my prostrations, my gratitude to this source. I mean, it is a knowledge of the self is the mother of all knowledges.
Beautiful.
So, these are some things. And I have another question.
Sure.
Can't leave you just like that. What aspects of Khalil Gibran's philosophy do you find most challenging, most thought-provoking for you?
It's a very good question. I think a lot of the work, like for example, when he talks about learning through suffering and it's very important to suffer in order to grow and self-realize. But I find nowadays people don't want to pain. They want quick fixes. We live in a world, I don't want to suffer. I don't want to sit through this. Just give me a quick fix, give me a remedy, give me something that's going to take this pain away. But the biggest wisdom is to sit through, is to go through, and really feel and experience and grieve and whatever is needed in that given moment. Grow through what you go through. It's so important. So I cannot, I know we're always after give me quick answers, but this is the best teacher. Is suffering is, there's a lot of learning. It's not necessarily a bad thing. And also we live in a world where we are very dependent on external validation. And Khalil Gibran's work is very much about the inner wisdom and the inner truth and going inwards. And we need to have more faith in our abilities rather than relying on the likes on social media, is to really have that intuition and have that feeling and confidence rather than just dependency on others. I mean, to be honest, he was non-conventional. He wasn't very big on institutional governments, how the religious groups tried to control. He was a bit, so this sometimes can be a bit challenging for some people, but ultimately his goal was to go inwards. It wasn't to negate anyone or anything, but it was more the answers are all within. And also some people have an understanding that you cannot be spiritual and at the same time be, material, but ultimately they can coexist. You don't need to just go down the spiritual path. We live in this world, so of course we take what we can from it, but at the same time, our spiritual growth and journey it coexists. We cannot have one without the other. So there's a lot of learning, dissolving the ego, but it's making it relevant and seeing it for what it is. And, it's very, very thought-provoking, gets you really to think and to go inwards and to dig deep, really, not just go through life superficially, but really to understand your inner desires, how your mind works, what you need, and the readings, when I read it when I was a teenager, is not the same as me reading it now. It's completely different meaning, a different phase of your life, different chapter evolves, your mind works differently. And I really liked what you said about self. We know so much about celebrities and everyone, but it's ultimately the more we know ourselves, the more easier it is to navigate and understand and grow. And I highly recommend all his books to everyone, no matter where you're from. It's across cultures, across ages, generations. There's so much, and I have constantly, I'll just pick up a page, read a quote, it'll inspire me, it'll frame my day. I'm going to live by this today. So there's a lot of inspiration.
I can imagine.
Yes.
One person's life he works.
Yes.
The impact he had is he helped generations, continue to help generations. One person, irrespective of how he lived his life, what he contributed, the impact. As he mentioned, it is challenging. It is very thought-provoking. It's fascinating.
It is.
I'm glad that you had these insights, you have that access. You'll be, I'm sure, been to this place.
Yes, it's beautiful. Yes, and there's even a wax museum that's done, I have a picture with the wax museum, but I don't have it on me. But yeah, it was just you get that energy. I mean, he was inspired by the mountains and the beauty of the nature, and he was very much involved, and he was a mover, a shaker on many levels, collectively, individually. It's just
You keep saying he's way above his time.
Yes.
Whatever he contributed was way above. Even now it looks like that.
Exactly. And this, we were reading, was it in this book, what he had said about or was it in the other, I think it was in the other.
What is read from the...
Yes, about...
From one mind will be read by thousands of minds.
Exactly.
What a statement. Commanding statement.
What I say now with one heart will be said tomorrow by thousands of hearts. That's exactly manifested as...
Great, right?
Yes.
It's so wonderful.
It is.
And I want to end with one of my favorite messages of Khalil Gibran. He says, to be able to look back upon one's life in satisfaction is to have lived twice.
Yes.
I repeat, to be able to look back upon one's life in satisfaction is to have lived twice.
Beautiful.
What a beautiful
Yes.
I mean, that's how I wish all viewers or friends, families, when you look back at life, there's a certain sense of satisfaction, fulfillment, a joy.
True.
Then I have done my best. The Vedas, it says, as you came into this world, as you cried, the world rejoiced. When you came into this world, as you cried, the world rejoiced. When you leave this world, let the world cry, where is rejoice. That the words of Khalil Gibran.
Beautiful.
To look back in one's life in satisfaction is to have lived twice. So
That's incredible. Exactly.
thank you so much for this time, for your wisdom, for your patience, and all your efforts. And gratitude to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was so inspirational and nicely explained. And I'm hoping all our viewers will actually read the books and enjoy them as much as we have.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
It will happen.
It will. It will.